And I'm going to start off with Martine. We have 5 people that are here today, and one is coming on and off, but I'm going to start with Martine. Martine's experiences as a drug developer. She has over 3 decades of experience working at Baxter, Nestle, Roche, AstraZeneca, and now she's the head of product leadership for VectivBio, which is a very small company out of Basel, which is in their phase 3 trials for rare disease for short bowel syndrome. And she is joining us today. She has a very famous quote that she thinks also applies to our industry, and it's the quote, "It takes a village to raise a child." And I think that is absolutely correct, Martine, that it does apply to our industry as well. Besaint has over 12 years of project and portfolio management. He's currently at Takeda, Manufacturing Systems IT. His focus is to increase business value by increasing agility and decreasing bureaucracy. He's a certified Scrum Master and studying general management currently in Bern. And we have Besaint. Besaint is from my home area of California. I have a house in San Francisco still too.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you for getting up early to join us. She has 2 decades of experience as a program manager, and she's working currently with Align Technologies out of San Jose. It's a global medical device manufacturing company. And she is a senior program manager and an outdoor enthusiast who recently climbed Half Dome and realized that she is no longer afraid of heights. And Norbert, have we had a chance to get Norbert online? I know he is having some technical difficulties. I don't see him at the bottom, but I'm going to introduce him anyways because he'll be joining us shortly. But he is with Element Sciences, an R&D leader for complete life cycle from concept to launch. He's also in the San Francisco Bay Area and has experience with 3 other companies: Resonance Medical, Carl Zeiss Vision, and Siemens. He recently ran the Boston Marathon, but virtually, and even received a medal for it. So I'm going to start with the first question, and thank you all for joining us. The first question I'm going to ask Bert to start off. What are the key considerations for setting up a Agile process in a life sciences organization?
Yeah, well, I think important is to say that it is not for the purpose to run projects faster or quicker. This is not the case, especially not in our highly regulated environment. But this is a way to learn faster. This is, I think, the biggest advantage. We learn faster, we fail faster, and we can introduce the outcomes of the learnings into the project. Also, we are able to deliver faster small pieces of the overall project, which is also a good thing because then we can also test then the outcomes then in the real world. Any other opinions on that?
I may go ahead and I fully agree with you. I think agility is a way to operate, and for me the importance is the learning aspect. You just not only do and do linear development, but at each step you validate what you are doing. You cross-check if you're on the right path, and then you adapt your development plan in terms of next activities. So for me, the agility has the importance to make sure we adapt to things in the environment and the project in a more systematic way. I think that's something we would tend anyway to do, but I think with an agile process or an agile mindset, you make sure you're not running and doing too many mistakes too often the same way.
Thank you. Besaint, would you like to?
Yes, I think this comes down to also something, Agile has become such I think an overused term these days. Everybody wants to be Agile. There's a lot of buzz around it. And I think Martine and I were discussing the other day, just because it sounds cool is not why you want to be Agile, like be actually pointed out, like why do you have to consider where your organization is and what you're trying to accomplish, and move from there. So Agile transformation, I think it's both a top-down and a bottom-up approach, in the sense that you need the engagement from your organization and the backing to actually, get that commitment and decide for yourself, are you ready? Is this the time for you to go Agile? because we've already seen, there's a lot of benefits around being able to adapt to change. I think that's the biggest one. Being able to make these little changes and have a more predictable outcomes, to be able to deliver value to your customers, to have these feedback loops. But is the program or the project that you're working on currently something that'll benefit from transitioning over to this methodology, and then getting your organizational backing towards it, because your success will be determined by that. So I think those are some key considerations for organizations to think about, where they are in their journey and where they want to go from there.
Absolutely. And I think when some of the older stakeholders in our organizations hear the term Agile, they think it means it's a free-for-all term for project management, that things don't necessarily need to follow a process or be organized per traditional processes. What is a way that you work with some of the stakeholders in your organization to open them up to using Agile processes and getting them used to using this term and using the tools around it?
I would compare two types of industries or size of industry. I'm working actually in a very small company. We are only around 20 people. So I think Agile in that context is simple, because you naturally convert and discuss with each other, because we need all 20 of us. So I think in our case, the need of a process, it's less important than the mindset. I come from bigger companies, and then of course you cannot operate in that kind of natural way. Then you need a little more structure, and you need to convince line management, you need to convince a whole bunch of other people before you can operate in another way than the one is usual. So I said introducing Agile might make it completely different where you are and what you are doing. One might be just kind of culture and mindset, and other might be more heavy in tools and processes to be successful. But I think that's a discussion we had with Besaint more than one time.
Absolutely. Besaint, would you like to add on to that?
I think you're mute.
Yeah, I think you're on mute.
I asked to mute myself, so I'm following directions.
There we go.
So I think it's very important to get your team aligned behind it, as Martine was saying, and I really feel that prioritizing training and really getting everybody more comfortable with the Agile terminology is going to be key to the success. So having everybody on the same page, understanding what that development cycle is going to look like, what your shared goals are going to be, and then really driving a culture of delegation of power. That's oftentimes with bigger companies a challenge, because you have all of these decision-making processes that take forever, whereas the key, I guess the essence of Scrum and Agile is to actually be able to move faster. So everybody throughout the organization needs to be comfortable with that idea of delegation of power. You need to trust your people to make the right decisions and move along, move faster along and make those decisions in the right time frame. So I think that also is very key, driving towards that cultural change of, creating a sense of shared ownership, but at the same time having this delegation of power.
Absolutely. And Bert?
Yeah, I see in a lot of organizations now that they really start to force or even brute force Agile projects, and really introducing KPIs, saying we want to have 30% of all projects being run as an Agile project. I think that's a very dangerous approach, because the project has to fit. We really have here the two parameters, like do we exactly know what we are going to do, and how are we going to do? So if this is all well known, so we know we have the very specific project scope, and we do know the tools, and we have done it already, then I would still say waterfall is the best approach, because it's lean, it's fast, and it's also quick. But the more uncertain the scope is, or the less we know about the technology we are going to use, the more agile projects or Scrum can help here to, as I said in the beginning, to learn fast, to fail fast, and incorporate the learnings then in the upcoming sprints of the project. But just to defining KPIs and saying we need to have 30% of all projects run in Scrum mode, that's very dangerous, and I think it will not help the agility in the companies to drive this forward.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think we lived through a world that changed quickly the last 10 months, and I think as much as our surroundings changes, the way we have to deal with it and operate has to be accordingly. And I think even if you're not using the term agile, I think everybody learned to be agile and operate in new ways by the force of what we are facing. So I think agile is getting for a lot of people a second nature, because the world of us and how we tend to operate change more quick than it can breathe.
Absolutely. The only thing constant is change nowadays. So Agile seems to be a way that companies can, as Bert said, to fail fast and learn and start things over again, maybe in a better way. And it was interesting. Now, Bert, you said that in some cases it's better to use the waterfall versus the Agile approach. And is there a clear definition on when you should use one or the other?
Well, that's it. Yeah. So as I know a little bit my projects in the portfolio, and if I see a scope that is very well defined and agreed with all the stakeholders, and also the technology is known, it's really nothing new. Mostly these are, I'm coming from the IT side, I'm not from lives, so if the scope and the technology is known, then I think it's quicker with going with a waterfall approach, because we also need to keep in mind the JXP requirements that are coming. You need to qualify and validate the systems. And if you do this in an agile project with all the sprints, you do it a couple of times instead of just at the end. And this is very time and consuming, money consuming, also consumes a lot of nerves.
Yes. And Besaint, I'm going to start the next question with you, since you're in the tech capital of the world. What are the best digital tools to use for running an agile project? And there are a lot of them out there right now. What are some of the best that you've seen?
So I think we are very heavily Jira oriented company, and I think it's driven a lot of structure for us. So there's two schools of thought. I think a lot of the smaller companies kind of benefit from more informal, maybe even, like on the fly development of what can we use, to maybe track a burn down charts or develop, backlogs, and really trying to pinpoint a tool in the beginning and trying to fit your process into it may not be the right thing to do. So it's important for organizations to step back and see, like what might fit their needs the best. Having said that, I think for us, Jira has worked tremendously well. And again, I think there's two schools of thought. For us, standardization, driving that standardization has been very beneficial because we are geographically very distributed company across time zones. So even though I think co-localization really helps with your agile process, I think for us, having teams being able to collaborate across a common platform, a common terminology, where we know what are the expectations, we're looking at the same data, making the same interpretations, has been very important. So, like we might be on the calls at the same time, but we know that our Moscow office is working, while we're away, or our India office or Costa Rica is up, and everybody's looking at the same data. They know the expectations are the same. They're looking at the issues. They know where in the life cycle we are. Our retrospective meetings are a lot more, concrete, and our customer demos are a lot more firmer just because of that platform and tool standardization. But that works for a company, larger organizations. I can understand that from smaller organizations, maybe that having more flexibility in terms of their tool and really being able to decide, what tool might fit your purpose is an important consideration.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head at the beginning of what you were saying, that you have to have a process first before you set any tools into motion. So since you have a lot of IT experience with large companies, how would you say these agile tools are working in the larger corporations?
They work quite well because they are quite well established in these days anyway. So I see a lot of SharePoint usage, for example. So SharePoint is quite a simple approach, but it's good to store documents, also to share information. Other things are, as Sahni said, is collaboration tools that are also well established in Novartis or also Takeda, like WebEx or MS Teams. I think this is very important, that the team is working together, through a collaboration tool to build up a common mindset and also a sense or feeling about the whole project.
Absolutely. And Martine, you came from some large companies and now at a startup sort of company. What has that transition been like?
Yeah, there are two elements. I think one thing which I would put forward is the commonalities. You said rightly, if you want to implement, you have to know the structure you're building. So you have to be cognizant that you're not starting a Wild West activity. And the other thing, which I found even more important, is creating a common language. I think things like very simple questions like, when do we start a clinical study? It's so agree upon that starting a clinical study is the first site initiation of first patient dose across the organization. You may have endless discussion about nothing because you are not working with the exact same assumption. That's just a very simple example of that. The other thing is you have to use the tools that people can use. We are working in at least in my career, I worked with scientific people. And scientific people have a certain sensibility towards tool, which is more or less developed. And I think simple things like Fairwalk, Team, OneNote, or the Microsoft Help tool, Microsoft Projects, integration of plans. I think you have to be cognizant that there's only a certain quantity of things you can bring into an organization to have all your team members use. And I think there's the other thing which I learned in both ways. Sometimes techie savvy people love to change because the next fashion is around the corner. And if you don't have a certain stability in the organization about what to use, how to use, you don't get anything done properly, and you lose precious time. But I think that's the thing I noted both in small and big organizations. And of course, tailor to your audience. I think you cannot go with a heavy portfolio project management system when you have big compounds. I think that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You will consider it when you get to 10, 15, or whatever. But I think tailor your tools to the questions you have in the organization that you are.
So some of the tools that are out there are making sure that they connect between different departments of the company. For instance, you want to have one set of numbers and you want to have one set of documentation ruling the company so that people aren't using different databases for the same information. Now, it's mentioned SharePoint. That's a typical software that a lot of companies use behind Microsoft Teams in order to do their document management. I would say the financial side of companies are typically using SAP maybe in the quality systems, TrackWise, LIMS, are these all typical softwares that the companies are using out there in your opinions as well? And if so, how do you make sure that these other systems are talking to one another, or that the information can be transferred for your project teams between these other databases that your stakeholders are using?
When I work in AstraZeneca, we had a huge project. So we all use, we call it one source of the truth. Because exactly that problem you mentioned is everybody has its own system with tweaks. And then when you put it together, you're not putting them. And one important thing I noticed in the organization, you have to spend time to find a common platform, to define it, to agree, and the discipline to use it, because then you just go on content discussion. Otherwise, you just use your time with what is called a data reconciliation discussion, which I hated, because it's not what you want to do. You want to progress the project portfolio. So for me, I think the good learning in big organizations is that you really have to have every function around an agreement to a certain level of commonality. And you have to go through the pain of adjusting, working with the training, and having people asking to give up their babies. And I have a wonderful Excel macro which fell out, but nobody else can understand. So I think if you do that, and you do that, then you gain so much after, so much.
Absolutely.
But Besaint, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think as usual, to bring all these systems together is putting on top multi-dimensional database like a Power BI or Tableau or reporting tools, so you can pull the data from the various systems out and show them in a convenient way, such a dashboard that is showing the burn down chart and financials, other things, statuses, etc. Takes some time, to build something up like this. Also takes some resources to program the interfaces. And oops, I'm still here because my
you're still there. We see you. Hear you well.
was flashing. But these are tools that we also use to bring the data together, and show the information about the projects.
Absolutely. And Besaint, any experience on your side?
I think I'm with Bet on that in the sense, I would like to caution against actually over automation. I know we have all of these systems, but is there a need to actually talk to them? Because when you're talking about, an agility, or you're actually talking about transparency. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is visible across the organization. And I think to accomplish that, all you need is really good dashboards and really good maybe reporting tools where you can actually roll up this data into a report that kind of makes sense. So that's important. Something that I just read on the chat, and while, that I'd like to address, somebody talked about the Helena trial, So when I talked about, and this kind of, when I talk about over automation or thinking about what fits the purpose for your organization, I think what's also important, or what we've seen, is like a lot of, at least in the pharmaceutical and medical device organizations, using a combination of Agile and waterfall, it's called Agile, or so you want to start out small, you want to get comfortable with the methodology, and maybe embed Scrum cycles within your waterfall development technology, and that's fine. Try, get your feet wet, try to see how that works. And what I've seen is many of the organizations actually have great success doing that. In fact, when I started out with a smaller company, we had a very structured process, a stage gate process that was working fine. But we had these combination products where we had software firmware development, where the teams were a lot more comfortable using the Agile methodology. So embedding these cycles, within the stage gate process actually gave us great results, rather than forcing everybody to jump and completely go Agile. And, in a regulated industry, which presents a lot of those challenges, just finding what works for you is very important.
Absolutely. Well, we've reached 30 minutes, and I know that there are some presentations that are following this forum. And so, Thomas, I'm going to ask you, are there any questions from the audience that the panel can answer?
Kelly, not so far, but you're going to go on for a couple more minutes because we're just getting the next speakers on for the next session. So thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll go a few more minutes. One of the things I want to ask, after Besaint, you talked about the dashboards. Are there a lot of companies that are starting to adopt Microsoft Teams to do their dashboards as well, now that they're taking their systems online? And I think with coronavirus, a lot of people have started working from home, and there are quite a few capabilities within the software, and I'm not sure if anybody's using it on the project and portfolio.
Absolutely. We are a very big Microsoft user, heavily into Teams, and I cannot, I guess I could talk about Teams all day and how much it helps with collaboration. Having said that, you know, like we use Teams and the collaboration tools to put everything kind of in the cloud to have a common collaboration backbone. So we do have a Jira system. We are a big Salesforce house. We are one of the Salesforce top customers. We have a lot of we use a lot of software tools, and Teams has really helped with collaboration. You know, bringing these different experts from the cross-functional areas together to collaborate and being able to share the data. You know, yeah, so yes, I'm
good.
Yep.
And another thing too, a lot of the project schedules typically in the past have either sat in a Microsoft project sort of landscape or even on Excel spreadsheets. Has anyone found a good project and portfolio management tool that has good scheduling capabilities? I think Planisware was what we used at Roche, and I know that was the first thing that I was frustrated with when we started bringing that on board, is that the scheduling capabilities were not innate like something to Excel or Microsoft Project or even Primavera standards. Does anybody have any insight on that?
I think we also worked a long time at Roche, and same thing at AstraZeneca. We had also Planisware as a kind of overarching engineering tool for portfolio management. And I think what I noticed with Planisware is it can do so much. If you are not disciplined in limiting the use to what you need, you really get a wild west. And I think one thing I learned in big corporation and Planisware, whatever tool is you have to know what the tool can, what the tool cannot, and what you want to achieve with it. And with that, sometimes you have to cut down the abilities which are offered to you to what you need, and then focus on working that. And when we did that, both at Roche and AstraZeneca, Planisware became far more useful. We could do enterprise project management with it. We could use standard reportings, dashboards, and everything. But I think the long work was making sure we all agree on what we use. A huge training program, a very good discipline on the data ownership, because I think that could also call the Wild West if one at the end of change something, not aware about what happens. So I think limit yourself sounds a bit kind of odd when you have so much capabilities, but if you're not doing that, I think people hated Planisware, and I can understand why. So I think you can get at that tool what you need, but again, time, discipline, and effort needs to be done. In my actual world, I wouldn't dare to use such kind of sophistication, because our project is an N of 1 or 2. So honestly, I think that's not really what we need. So I classically use still Microsoft Project, and there's an enterprise version where I can extract Gantt charts, which are then tailored to a one-pager, to the needs. You can import them in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint and can play with, so you're not having this data duplication, that you have a plan, you draw it, you write in it, and in the meantime you make plenty of translation mistakes. So I think the classical tools we have at hand was the Microsoft package heads, for at least for small portfolios. They might not be powerful for bigger ones, but that with an Besaint team as a platform for the project to interact, to work together, is quite a nice package. But again, agree what you want, simplify to a maximum, and create a common language. I think I'm back always to that 3.
Yeah, and I think all 3 of you mentioned that training is very important, that whenever you do get tools out there that the organization can use, that people, especially your stakeholders, are informed and trained in how to properly get that data out of the system. And one of the things that you come into the problem with is that all the project managers might be doing a different level of quality of the data that they're inputting into the system. And so it's a garbage in, garbage out. As long as you've got somebody to do that data cleansing and making sure that all the information going into that database is at the same level of quality, then you can really get the information out of the system to balance your portfolio, to look at the priorities, to really understand why one project might be more or less vulnerable for change than another one, or maybe there's something that is telling you if there's not enough information on a system on a project, is it even worth doing? And sometimes it's just a matter of the training of the individual and knowing how to put that information in the system. So
that's a very valid point, Kelly. So the first thing that I did at Novartis is to establish common processes for all project managers, so that the projects the same way, using the same processes, also enter the data the same way, especially on the financial side. Yes? Because if you have 1 or 2 projects that are managed very badly, you cannot aggregate the data anymore. There's no way to consolidate if you have 2 or 3 projects that are very bad maintained. And that's one of the key points at the beginning to introduce a proper portfolio management. Maybe also one word to the PPM tools. I see also a lot of organizations that are using the PPM tools for managing the projects, which I think is a wrong approach. The portfolio management tool is for managing portfolios. So collecting demand, prioritizing, then also track then the benefits and value, but on a, let's say, 10 kilometer above the ground view, not in the details. As companies start to think that they can manage the project out of Clarity or Planisware or whatever, these tools will bust. It's just it's too much for them. They're not designed for this. So we need to be aware or mindful, to not mix this up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Besaint, Besaint? On the tools in your organization, how would you say that the connection between these different systems is going for you?
I think it's very important to define the requirements, like Beth was saying, like what are you trying to, and Martine also, like what are you trying to get out of the tool? Having that level of understanding that what you can expect only what you put into the system to generate. So defining your data, your metadata, right in the beginning correctly. That time to understand, what purpose are you looking for the tool, or what problem are you looking for the tool to solve, and going through a systematic process, of getting your stakeholders involved in even the tool selection. And in many cases, you may not really need to be that automated. For smaller organizations, it might just be fine to be using, Excel or something like that. So do you really need to invest in a tool that you're going to spend more time maintaining? So I think it's kind of a balance, and every organization needs to step back and kind of make that decision for themselves, but really focus on what your needs are and what you're trying to get out of the tool before you jump in, because everybody's using Jira. That might not be the tool for you.
But balancing resources is something that's been very hard with these portfolio management tools to conquer, and especially too when you're dealing with resources that go across many different departments. And maybe when you're with a small company like Martine and Besaint, your companies are relatively, it sounds like they're relatively small at the moment, and so maybe it's easy to get the buy-in from the other stakeholders when you're needing to borrow resources from other departments. But have you found something within IT tools yet that can help with the resource allocations?
I think people were talking about, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I think there was I was looking at the chat and there was talk about like PlanSphere, PlanView. That's what we're using for our resource management, and it works very well. In my past organizations, we had a homegrown application really that I was talking about, coming out of Excel, and that worked very well. So again, fit your purpose, what are you trying to do? Don't overcomplicate things. Don't put an overhead of a system and spend lots of time and money developing something that you don't need.
Absolutely.
I agree with Besaint. I think in my past life in bigger companies, we used PlanSphere to manage the resources, but I think the best way to manage them is to have a cross-functional discussion with the stakeholders. So we align on what are the deliverables and what are the critical resources. So a tool can help you to a degree, but I think the discussion will be the one and the alignment on what you want to achieve with the partner function is the one who will give you the results in terms of deliverables. So I think sometimes I have seen people hiding behind tools because I think you can have a long discussion about that. Because at the end they know exactly they had other problems to solve. So the tools, as Besaint said, need to be tailored to your needs, need to be used in a way people are using them constructively. And if not, I think then the time you have to think if you need them.
Okay. Thank you all.